introducing the $20 million venture capital partnership that invests in companies with the capacity to deliver delightful moments. Welcome to Joyance Partners, and welcome to another episode of Builder Nation. For today's agenda, we have Mike Edelhart, General Partner at this VC. So welcome, Mike. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining today.
My pleasure. I'm the managing partner of Joyance Partners, also of the Social Starts Funds, which is an earlier set of funds. These funds are the latest expressions of a career that goes back very early in technology to the early days of PCs. I helped set up PC Magazine, PC Week, the Zip Davis computer publications that were dominant back in those days, the Zip Testing Lab, oversaw the development of the standard benchmarks of the PC era. Had a lot of fun, had a lot of influence, did well financially at that company. It was sold in the early 1990s to Masayoshi Son, so I was one of the early executives at SoftBank. I got into venture, and from SoftBank in a couple of funds, some accelerator activities here in the Valley for big companies like Bloomberg. Last dozen years or so, our funds, as you say, are focused on how technology and science can deliver delight into the lives of individuals. We think that's important and valuable, and it's about the most fun area I've had a chance to invest in my long career.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. And I know that you're a journalist by heart. So how would you say this has been an influence whenever you started at the venture?
I did. I started my career as a journalist, but nerd at heart. So I was a science journalist, wrote about science, did books with scientists, started a science-related TV show with Children's Television Workshop, and then computer journalism. The work is very similar. So in journalism, you have to get people to talk to you and agree that you're valuable. In VC, you have to get entrepreneurs to talk to you and agree that you're valuable. You're trying to talk to people, but in a structured way to understand how much to value what they're saying and how it matches what you're hearing from others. And so I found the work very similar. And I think journalism training is actually very useful training for being a VC. Zip was invaluable though, because we tested every attribute of every product during that early PC revolution. And so I learned a lot there about what does and doesn't work, how technology actually does or doesn't succeed in business and in people's lives.
Thank you so much for sharing. Really interesting background. I know that you guys have recently been investing in beauty and personal care companies. So could you talk a little bit about it and the reason behind that?
We're all about delight. And one aspect of delight is how you feel about yourself when you present yourself to the outside world. And cosmetics is part of that. And not just traditional cosmetic, not just slathering things on your face, but looking good and feeling like you look good. And so where science is at now is a whole new generation of healthier ingredients, the microbiome and other biological effects where you can improve the way you look from the inside out, greater recognition that what you eat and drink is part of all this, exercise is part of all this, and increasing the sense of peace and control you have in your surroundings are all part of this. And so we're interested in companies that we think have the potential to transform any of those areas.
I was looking through the website and I noticed that you do have a lot of companies, so many companies in your portfolio. So I'm curious to ask, do you remember the first experiences?
Yeah, we've invested in these funds in more than 500 companies and in Joyance in more than 200 over the last dozen years for Social Starts and the last 7 years for Joyance. I think I remember the names of all my children, but it's a lot of them. We do that because we believe we invest at the very beginning of companies. We think that's where our greatest opportunity is, where the entrepreneurs most welcome support and helpfulness from a fund like ours. But we recognize that we don't really know at the beginning what the outcomes are. So we identify areas like emotional consumer goods that matter to us. And then we look at a lot of companies in that area and we'll support the ones that we think have a shot at becoming And then we'll continue to support and develop longer term relationships with the ones that actually live up to that potential. So a lot of first checks, a smaller universe of second checks. And now we have a follow-on fund where we think companies really are producing a lot of potential value. We can write big checks.
Wow. And is there something specific that you look up for whenever you are looking or searching for startups?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a standard trope, but it's true all the same. We look for 5 T's. The first T is timing. The single biggest reason startups fail is that it's the wrong time for them. Science isn't ready. People aren't ready for it. So folks walk around with little dots in their ears talking to the air. Everyone thinks it's normal. 10 years ago, you'd have gotten arrested for those behaviors. So timing matters. And we study which segments we think are ready to break out now. And is the science at a point where it can produce products people understand? Are people ready for this particular change? That kind of thing. The second is the technology or the science. We have a lot of scientists, medical doctors, folks with tech backgrounds on the team. And we believe that science and tech is a way to produce something really novel, gives a company an edge in the market, time to develop, find its audience. So that matters to us a lot. The third is the team. Almost everybody is bad at being an entrepreneur. It's a very difficult, unusual thing to do. So we're looking at founders, the leaders, and trying to understand, why are you doing this? You could have a normal job. You could have a normal life. You could be home with your significant other and kids at dinner time, but you're not choosing that. Why? We're looking for a real sense of openness, commitment, truth-telling. And then we look at temperament. We believe a small group of people who love one another and love what they're doing can essentially accomplish anything. And we're looking for that sense of joy in the team, because if they are really into it together, then the pain and fusion and tumult of trying to start a company will wear away. And then finally, the terms. They have to be rational, appropriate to the risk involved. And if all of those line up, we will support a company and then try and help them get to the next step and support them all through their early phase.
Wow, super interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. At the end of the day, it has to align with your vision, with the company's vision. What would you say has been the most rewarding experience?
I can talk about the rewarding experiences. I can talk about the value creating experiences, and they're not always the same things and not always at the same time. We have a portfolio company called Lark that's an AI, and it's been around for years. So it preceded the sort of frenzy around AI that completely replicates the behavior of a registered nurse dealing with a chronic condition, that it qualifies for standard insurance. So you can turn off the human nurse, turn on the diabetes AI nurse at night, and it works great. That company is incredibly valuable. What they're doing is incredibly important and helped patients, doctors, everybody a lot during COVID. And it's a wonderful investment. But we have companies that do things like help profoundly paralyzed kids walk, an AI exoskeleton that allows kids with cerebral palsy and that kind of thing to actually get up and about for the first time in their lives. And that company's still small and is doing well, but sort of unproven. But to see the effect on those families of watching their kid at the dinner table for the first time, watching their kid walk around and interact with the family for the first time, just makes me happy that I get to do this for a living. It changes the kids' lives. It changes the families' lives. And we imagine that future versions of this won't be clunky exoskeletons. They'll be light exoskeletons. And the version after that will be snazzy AI-driven braces. And that at some point it does that. Sufficiently advanced technology is akin to magic and just disappear. It's just a wonderful thing to be able to commit my time and our resources and support.
I think there's nothing more rewarding than knowing that you're helping and improving people's lives. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I spent 3 decades focused on things like trying to get 1% more efficiency out of word processors or a tiny degree of robustness out of networks. And that's valuable. And I'm glad I had a chance to do it. But to actually focus on and invest in things that have the potential to extend people's lives, change people's lives, allow them to get to their lives a little more gracefully or happily is just unprecedented for me.
Have you guys only invested in US startups or?
No, we're a world fund. So we have funds domiciled in the US and Europe, and we expect to have a fund domiciled in Asia later this year. We have team members from all of them. We have team on the ground in the US, Europe, and Asia. We're quite diverse, and it's part of our methodology because we feel the next great company may come from the Valley, but it could come from Germany, it could come from Oman, it could come from Singapore. Increasingly, entrepreneurship is a worldwide activity, and we're active co-participants in that.
What would you say are the next steps for Joyance?
We've grown a lot. So these funds, two of us, Zip Davis colleague and I started these funds. He's retired. And they were microscopically, essentially glorified angel investors. And our funds are about 150 million under management now. And more than half of that has come in the last year and a half. So we've gotten much bigger, and I believe we'll get much bigger again this year. We could double size again this year, in part because we're proud enough to think we're good at our jobs, but largely because health matters and happiness matters, and there's a growing interest and focus on that in a stressful, kind of crazy world. A lot of my job involves managing that growth and helping bring forward a younger generation of investors and investment support people who will be the leaders of this fund in the future.
And last but not least, Mike, do you have any advice for future entrepreneurs or people starting on this path?
Being an entrepreneur, being an investor are really different things. So that's one thing. So folks are wondering, am I an entrepreneur? Am I a VC? Entrepreneurs build things. So when you think about building things, if you have spare time, you start tinkering. You probably are an entrepreneur. If you want to be among a small group, together you're committed to one thing. You're an entrepreneur. If you're a little more cerebral and think about things a lot and try and understand the patterns and what makes things tick, maybe you're an investor, but investors essentially have to influence things with their arms behind them. You can't reach out and grab the company. That's the entrepreneur's job. So that's the first thing. What kind of personality are you? A builder, an evaluator. And if you're sitting there in your parlor going, I wonder if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm not sure, then the answer is almost certainly you're not. Because if you're an entrepreneur, the drive to do this, the drive to create, the need to be among a group of danger-seeking, breakthrough-producing folks would be unstoppable. So if you have that drive, if it's like, I can't stand it anymore, then do it. But if you have anything less than that drive, don't do it, because there are here or in New York or in China or in Jerusalem or somewhere, somebody who is absolutely driven to do whatever it is you're thinking about doing. When folks think about entrepreneurship, it's one of the challenges in the culture. We celebrate the win, but almost every startup loses. Very few have huge breakthroughs. Fewer than half the company make it through successful A round. So that means whatever you think, the likelihood is that you're going to be experiencing a lot of tribulation and you'll probably fail. So if that's the case, you better be doing something you love. You better be with people you love. You better find the satisfaction of contributing that. And if you win, that's great. But even if you don't win, you won because you spent 4 years, 5 years, 10 years working on something you love with people you love, and it contributed in some way to the ultimate outcome.
Do you have any social media handles? Where can people find you or the company?
I'm Mike at Joyance Partners, and I try and be responsive to folks who check in. And our team is all over. I live in San Francisco, but I spend about half my time in New York. I'm in Europe once a quarter, Asia a couple of times a year. And we have folks all over. So we try to be very available. Entrepreneurs can reach out to us on the website or through LinkedIn, almost anywhere. And we do try to respond with people. reach out to the maximum degree that we can.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike, for being here, for telling everything to us. And remember, guys, that you can also find more information, interesting articles, interesting interviews just like this one with Mike directly on our website, ControlHub.com/builder-nation. We would love to hear from you. And once again, Mike, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
My pleasure.